Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. And today I'm going to talk all about overland shows. It seems like a new one springs up every week. I can hardly even keep up with how many there are. And back in 2019, I toured the US and Canada, and I went to about 15 different overland shows. So I have pretty good experience with what these shows are like. And in today's episode, I'll talk all about, do I really think they're worth going to, and how to get the most value out of these overland shows. So if you've thought about going to a show, or if you went to one in the past and you didn't think it was very valuable, stick around. I'm going to get into all the details of how you can make them more valuable. So what do I mean when I say overland shows? I mean the really big ones like Overland Expo. They have an event in Flagstaff, Arizona. They have a new one in Colorado, and they have Overland Expo East, which is out in Virginia. There's also the series of overland rallies. So there's the one in the Northwest in Washington, there's one in British Columbia, and they have one in Colorado too. I went to the first one in 2019 and it was a great community event. But as well as that, I mean all of kind of the local ones that are springing up. There's the More Overland Expo, and in fact, there's so many, I can't even keep up with all of the names and all the locations. But at their heart, what are these overland sort of events or expos? They're basically a huge gathering of overlanders who come together to help teach each other, learn from each other, and even just hang out and have a good time. Part of it though, and kind of the part that gets all the attention, is they've now turned into these huge big vendor shows. So obviously sponsors who make products for four-wheel drives and for overlanding, they want to sell their products. So they pay to have a booth at these events, and they have all of their products there on display. And obviously you can spend hours and hours walking around this big vendor area looking at all of the stuff that's for sale. And I think that can be helpful because you can put your hands on the products, you can talk to the people who really did design them and who really do use them. But at the same time, I don't really think that's where the value comes from in these shows. Considering that you have to pay to get into these shows, then just going around and looking at stuff for sale, it doesn't really interest me. You know, you can learn just as much by looking at a catalog or looking online, even call up the company and have a discussion with them. I think if that was all that the shows offered, then I don't really think that it's a very valuable show, and I'd rather save my money and not go to that show. So what is actually valuable, what's worth going to? Look for events that actually have classes that are going to teach you what you need to know. And so these classes, they span kind of a huge range of stuff. There's classes about how to go four-wheel driving and how do you recover your vehicle. So those are really, really hands-on type things. And if that's something you want to learn about, a show like Overland Expo is a brilliant place to go. Real experts who know exactly what they're doing, they will teach you, and they're really nice guys. I've hung out with them a bunch. They'll teach you what you need to know to do that. Or my friend Dean Shirley runs a class called The 10 Essentials of Overlanding, where he runs through step by step what you really need to get into overlanding. And it's not just gear either, it's things like the right training, the right preparation, you know, some sort of navigation equipment. Things that they seem simple on the surface, but when Dean gets into the details, it turns out to be super, super valuable. And his class, in fact, it's always packed full. So those kinds of classes, they are really beneficial. And there's another thing too that these kinds of shows offer, and that is kind of more like inspirational things. And that can be like a slideshow or a movie about a particular trip. And I gave a slideshow at a couple of events about my Africa trip, and I try to make mine educational and help other people get out on the road. And they're the ones that I really enjoy. And so I'll never forget the first Overland Expo I went to, it was in 2012. And although I'd driven the Pan American Highway, I had never dreamed of driving Africa. It just seemed so next level and so out of my league. And so on the first day of Overland Expo, I was looking through the schedule. They post a really good schedule of all of these different classes and, you know, what time at what location. And there was a couple there who had driven around Africa, and they gave a class about it. And they didn't really just show a slideshow. They told stories of adventure. They talked about driving across the deserts and meeting locals and crossing these super remote border crossings. And I remember sitting in that class, I pretty much had an excitement attack. My heart rate went through the roof and I was shaking, and I just couldn't believe it. An ordinary guy could really go and drive around Africa. And that was where the whole spark started for me. But I feel like those types of classes, they are so exciting for me personally. And there'll be classes about driving up to Alaska, there'll be driving the Baja, the Pan American Highway. And these classes, they're taught by regular folk who really did get out there and do it. And so they're not super sponsored, they don't work for National Geographic. Often it'll be a couple or maybe a single person in a car or on a motorbike, but they just are really honest, genuine, down to earth. And they'll cut through some of the marketing, BS that you don't need all of those fancy products. You need a sense of adventure and you need to hit the road. And when you start seeing photos from like Mongolia or Russia or New Zealand or, whatever part of the world you've dreamed about, seeing a topic or a class about how to go there and how to do it, it is Wanderlust times 10,000. So if you're looking for some inspiration, if you're looking to kind of dream and think about where to go next, I really recommend looking at the schedule and figuring out these classes and which ones you want to get to. As well as those kinds of classes, there are usually demos in certain vendor booths that can be really beneficial. I remember one where they give a class on how to repair a tire. So they actually take a drill and they intentionally drill a hole through a perfectly usable tire and then demonstrate and get you involved with plugging that tire. How do you actually use your plug kit, using your air compressor to inflate it again. Real hands-on learning that is extraordinarily valuable. I learned a few things when I watched that class in Colorado, and I'll be able to plug my tires more efficiently next time. So there's a ton of hands-on stuff as well. So what I really recommend is, the vendor show can be interesting and you can see some cool products, but don't make that the focus of your weekend. Have a look at the schedule and highlight and circle all of the things that you really want to get to. And you're probably going to find that takes up more than half of your time at one of these Overland events. And that's a good thing. So you say, okay, I need to be in pavilion number 2 at midday, then I need to be in pavilion number 3 at 3 p.m., when you're moving around. Then you'll have time in between. That's where you can wander the vendor show. Kind of when you've got nothing better to be doing, the vendor show is a decent fallback plan, but really prioritize those classes and those kind of inspirational events. So that's all well and good, and I really enjoy it, and I think the shows are valuable for everything I've said so far, but there's actually another reason and the real secret where I think these shows are amazing. And I was really lucky. My friends Lewis and Lacey, who drove the Pan American Highway, they did this at my first Overland Expo, and they said, hey Dan, come with us, we'll show you how to do Overland Expo properly. And so what you do in the afternoon, maybe 4 p.m, 5 p.m, 6 p.m, you want to grab yourself a cold beverage and you're going to walk through the campground. And so the reason you do this is because most people are sort of back at camp by then, they're thinking about cooking dinner or they're sitting in the shade. And the really amazing part is these are just real honest people who have products on their vehicle. They have the awnings, the rooftop tents, and what's incredible is you'll find people who've modified them or who have adapted them to their own use. You might even find someone who's got the awning you were thinking of buying and it's completely covered in duct tape. And inevitably what's going to happen, if you stand there and look at it for even 30 seconds, the owner's going to come over, introduce themselves, and of course they're super friendly because Overlanders always are, and they're going to say, oh yeah, I bought it, but it turns out it's terrible in the wind and I had to duct tape it and my advice is you should never buy it. That right there is the best real advice you'll get at any Overland show. Make sure you listen to those real people. Don't listen to the person at the vendor booth who's trying to sell you that product that actually didn't work out in the real world. Same story, the next camp over, someone's gonna wander over and say, oh, hey, come check out what I've got. They'll say, oh, I bought a similar one, but I just modified it here and here, and I bought this bracket from this company, and now it's brilliant, it's super waterproof, it holds up in the rain, it blah, 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 it meets all the criteria, and it was half the price of that other one that didn't really work. So again, that information is just gold, and that's what you're really looking for. And as well as that too, you're just gonna see a ton of people They've built their own storage cabinets. They have their own little kitchen set up. And these aren't people who just bought it out of a catalog and use it once a month. These are people who've really battle tested this equipment. And so they're going to be able to tell you, oh yeah, our kitchen used to have a sink here and a that there, but they were junk and we moved all of that around and we redid it, and this is way better. And that's going to really get your gears turning and really thinking what's going to work for you and what do you need to do for your vehicle build. And so this is the best way to experience these Overland shows, walking through the campground. And inevitably what's going to happen, you'll make new friends, you'll meet someone and they'll say, hey, do you want a hamburger? You say, hamburger sounds pretty good. So inevitably now you're walking along, you've got a hamburger, you've got a cold drink, and kind of a group of you is going to wander from like vehicle to vehicle, looking at stuff, investigating, and every owner you meet along the way, they're going to have, oh, come check out my friend John. He's just 5 campsites away. I'll show you what he did with his whatever product it is. Then you go over and meet John and he shows you around. Then he tells you about Jim and Mary who did something else, and you go and check their setup out. And before you know it, you've spent 2 or 3 hours wandering around, meeting really friendly people and getting the best down-to-earth advice about places to go, equipment to set up, you know, how to camp with kids, whatever your specific need is. That's where you're gonna get that real gold information. And these people aren't paid. These people don't just have like a 30-minute time slot to kind of give you whatever they've pre-prepared. These are just real folks who are just honestly happy to be overlanding and happy to teach others how to do it. And inevitably, you're going to meet someone who sort of lives nearby or says, oh yeah, I drove that Mojave Trail track, or whichever one you're interested in. They'll give you all the info. You're probably even going to find new friends to go overlanding with in the future. So my advice, more than everything else at these overland shows, make sure you wander through the campsite in the early afternoon, put a big smile on your face, shake lots of hands, COVID safe, meet lots of new people, and really thoroughly enjoy getting to meet all of the characters who show up at these kind of events. So I hope that's been helpful, and I hope it gets you thinking about overland shows and about why they really are such a good thing, and they really do help build community and help you get out there and have adventures. And do you want to go just to sort of buy more shiny stuff or look at shiny stuff? Yeah. Or do you want to go to meet cool people and meet people who are really using this stuff in the real world? I know how I get value out of these shows, and I hope that you can do the same thing. So if it's been helpful, do hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel. New videos come out every Monday and Thursday. And as well as the videos here, I'm also posting over on Patreon. And these people here are supporting me on Patreon, and they're getting a ton of behind the scenes content about my upcoming expedition, the vehicle I'm building, where I'm going, and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And then of course, during the trip as well, they're going to continue to get a bunch of extra perks and behind the scenes content. So there's a link in the description. Head over to Patreon and have a look at the different perks you can get, starting at just $5 a month. You'll be helping bring these videos to life, helping to get me back on the road, and getting a bunch of sweet perks for yourself. So thanks very much again for watching. Stay safe out there, and maybe I'll bump into you on the road.